Good morning. We were asked to do a training. Hopefully we'll be able to do a live training soon. I know we're checking into it. I'm Kira, Michael's daughter. I'm the Exchequer for Black and North and part of the on-tier training team.
Does it feel weird to only list like one Exchequer job right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So she listed two, training and Exchequer.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I am Aislinn. I am your Kingdom Exchequer.
Morning, everybody. I am Elowen. I was Aquaterra's Exchequer for about 6 years and just recently finished up a term as Kingdom Exchequer.
I'm Torkel. I am, let's see, just Exchequer wise, part of the training team and the Laurel Sovereign of Arms Exchequer, which is the College of Heralds. College of Arms, sorry. I'm no longer a Canton Exchequer. Yay! Well, kind of. I mean, I've resigned and the person's going to take over next month, but yeah. In the past, I have been a baronial exchequer, a regional reporting deputy, a canton exchequer, and I don't know what else, several other things.
And good morning, everyone. I am Etiennette. I too have been a former Kingdom Exchequer, also on the training team. Currently, I'm Androna's Exchequer and the on-tier College of Arms. And have been Laurel. Not sure if I can. Those are the only Exchequer jobs I think I have right now.
Good morning. I'm Morna Judah's daughter. I am getting renewed training because I have not been an Exchequer for 30 years. And things are electronic now. Things are different.
Big time.
I am hoping to be the Exchequer for the soon-to-be incipient canton of Mist Ridge, of the North Olympic Peninsula. So I have been hounding Kira, I don't know what, since December, which I didn't miss because I missed that training. So I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm very happy to not be near Eslin's germs.
Morna, you're saying this is your fault? Just accept it. Just accept it and move on.
I can neither deny nor confirm.
Good morning. I'm Siobhan from Ramsgard, current Chancellor of the Exchequer. The rest of our team's going to be jumping in a little while. They say coffee first. I have, let's see, 2006-ish, I was the Chancellor of the Exchequer of Cold Keep. A couple years after that, I became Principality of Avical's contingency Exchequer, and I've been in and out of the Exchequer, blah, blah, gate is my geek kind of stuff ever since.
Hello, I am Malik Ibn Genie. Am I coming through? Okay, yes, and I've never actually been an Exchequer, but I've thought often about going into that, and so I've never really done it, and I'm all ears.
Hi, I'm Alessandra de Montefeltro in the Barony of Wywood. I am their Exchequer.
Hi, I'm Verena from Glenduvan. Like Morna, I haven't been an Exchequer for many, many, many years. And our barony's person who was going to take over has suddenly become a Tanist, so can't take over. So I'm thinking about trying to do it and see what it's like.
feel free to jump in and introduce yourself. So if you haven't yet,
If you want to, you don't have
if
to.
you want to, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sienna from Glenduven.
Away.
Hi, I'm Paul Van Sickle from Glenmere, actually the canton of Callidford. Deputy Seneschal, and so just beginning his journey. So thanks for welcoming me here.
Hi, I'm Anita Headley. I'm the Exchequer for Glenmere. I don't know if they heard me.
We did, we got you.
Okay.
Ron just turned on his camera, so he's got to be serious here in a minute.
Yes, I did. I may not be here mentally, but I'm here. I'm Orontius, former Kingdom Exchequer myself. I've got a few Exchequer roles. Oh, I'm Ontario Westport Exchequer, Ithra, and Moneyers Guild Exchequer right now.
Hi, I'm Ainsley from Glenduven. I'm also here just to learn about how to be an Exchequer. I'm not currently one.
I think this is the largest contingent we've had from Glenduven ever.
Yes. Yes, it is. Nice to see.
Awesome. That's because the current Exchequer is stepping down and would like to train very, very, very many people.
Well, numbers aren't scary, so it's a good thing.
I'm enjoying the Great Wall of SCA Muppets because I really was fearing that Orontius and Kira would be training just me. So thank you everybody, especially Glenduven, for being here.
It was actually Torkel that I had tagged to help with this in case nobody else would join me.
I'm a sucker. I mean, a volunteer.
All around good guy.
You're a pelican.
That's right.
We are Exchequers for life.
I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I gotta be here.
And we totally
Yep.
would have trained just you, Morna. Don't worry about it. We would have been okay if you were the only one that showed up.
Yep, you betcha.
We
Well,
have had
that's-
those trainings where there's like 4 or 5 of us training and like 2 people who want to learn. So
Yep, we're good with that.
I don't know how many PayPal classes I've done with just 1 or 2 people. It happens.
you mean credit card processing classes?
I know pre-reg is PayPal.
Yeah.
Pre-reg is still PayPal.
Hi, I'm Aylin. Hey, and Beth.
Sorry,
It says I don't have a camera, which I know is a lie. Liar, liar. Here. We even cleared some of the table.
And I've just heard from my team, the coffee is happening. They're gonna be here. They thought it started at 10:30, so I will catch them up on anything they missed.
We are recording. This will go up on YouTube, and I will post a link into the Exchequer group.
You rock.
Thank you. My collection of YouTube videos is like my fight practice videos and Exchequer training, and that's about it. Well, okay, to be fair, Kira did say 10 to 10:30 is meet and greet, welcome to the Exchequer Circle, and 10:30 is the
Can we
actual
get-
training bit.
Sorry, can CJ, can you mute yourself, please? We're getting a lot of background noise.
CJ.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
It did say that, yeah.
Well, Aislinn, do you have anything for us for the good of the order, as it were?
It's a lovely March morning. I've been frantically working on the roll-up to send off to society. Almost done with it. Had a few little snags, but all in all, it's going pretty well. I know that there are several branches that are working to get their signers changed. Any account changes that have been sent to society are unfortunately taking even longer than normal because the society Exchequer has sent them off to corporate, and the corporate office has intermittent issues with their internet due to all the issues California is having with weather. So yeah, please be patient with me.
Yeah, I decided Bluffton are gonna start theirs next meeting. Since we know who our seneschal is that's stepping up, so I can just start that process. I don't need a baron or a baroness on my checklist.
Not required.
Nope.
Yeah, what are they good for anyway? I mean, honestly.
Right, Your Excellency.
Whatever.
Oh, a couple more people. Oh, here's our sister. It's Caitlin.
Caitlin!
That's my replacement.
Really? Oh, way
Yeah.
to get her indoctrinated.
It wasn't me. It was her pelican.
Oh, good.
Her pelican voluntold
I'm proud of my daughter. Yes, we're spreading love.
You know, Caitlin, you still have no bookshelves and no books on the shelves.
I ran out of bookshelves. IKEA just delivered more. I just have to finish them.
Okay.
Well, do we want to start then? So 15 minutes early.
Well, let's see. Do we have more people coming on? I don't want to.
Actually, yeah, we've got a couple more people still logging in.
Yeah, there's been more people joining in. So I guess my question is is there anything anyone is specifically wanting to know so we make sure we can tag it?
Everything.
Okay, so
fair point.
Okay, so my question is, since I'm first up with the training, what is the level of exposure, I guess is probably the best way to put this, to reports and understanding what it is we're doing? In other words, how many beginners do we have here? Because that'll shift how I think how I'm probably going to approach things. Do we have a
Moloch is a beginner, I can tell you
right?
that.
Can you like raise your hands if you've never looked at a report or just have just started looking at reports?
Oh, wait, no, sorry.
The rest of my team, they have experience, but they haven't done it in a very, very long time. So
well, yeah,
would be great.
Okay.
So we've got one in chat because she doesn't have a camera that has her hand raised. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I would say the majority of it is going to be intro.
Intro.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that does shift things a little bit. Excuse me while I fix my chair. Because it's sinking. Okay. So that's gonna, I think that's gonna shift basically what I talk about a little bit. And Alessandra, you've been an Exchequer for a while, right?
Only about 6 months.
Okay, so
I took over last summer.
Okay, so you're good with doing a little more intro and
Yeah.
going through the report a little more?
I mean,
Okay.
ideally, the stuff that I'm really interested in, I'm gonna end up watching the recording because I have a family function this afternoon.
Right. Well, that's easy. And we can always get the rest of it, get you later.
We know how to find you.
Right.
Yes, we do. We know how to find you. All righty. So the other question I have is, are there people who are using the report format where the journal is built into the report? Okay. Or are you using a separate journal and then taking that information and putting it into the report?
Somebody just took over.
Yeah, could you? There you go. Okay, so do people understand what I'm talking about? That's the next one.
Sorry, do you mean ledger?
Yes, ledger journal, same thing. Yeah,
Oh, okay. They're two separate documents for me.
they're two separate documents for you. Okay.
I think
All right.
mine's a single document, just tons of tabs.
Right, yeah. You will have one that actually says journal on it, and then the next one would say budget, advances, trial balance, et cetera, et cetera.
And in chat, we have separate journal, and then somebody who finished their fourth quarter and it was already started.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take over this screen then. We can sort of work our way through this. Okay, so if you've got a question, make sure you raise your hand, and if someone could watch that for me, I would appreciate it. So a little bit of background on me. I professionally am a bookkeeper. It's what I do for a living. So sometimes I do forget that not everybody understands the accounting world or the accounting jargon, as it were, since we have so many new folks here. Some of the things that if I start getting too technical, make sure you say something. If I'm going too fast, make sure you say something and you want something repeated. Or if you have a question right then and there, don't wait till the end of the training to ask the question, because we're in the moment. Please make sure you're asking questions. There are no dumb questions. There are, especially for those of you that this is a brand new world for you, or even if you're just doing a refresher, make sure that you're understanding what we're talking about, because it's not, being an Exchequer is a lot of fun. It's very rewarding, especially if you geek out on spreadsheets. But welcome to the business side of the SCA. And this is where we have to take out all of the game stuff, and we have to concentrate on running.
Oh, yeah, and our dining room is a sewing studio. It's not really a dining room.
CJ, could you please mute yourself?
I thought I.
Thank you. Anyway, so you'd basically have to take most of the game side out of things for the actual part of reporting. Now, game side does come in when you're dealing with personalities and all of that stuff, and you will find that it can get quite contentious when you start talking about money. My favorite line, and the people I've trained all know it well, is people get funny about money. So the best thing I can ever say for anybody who is an Exchequer is just make sure that you are have everything organized, you know your rules, and if you ever need any help and you've got someone who's giving you issues, make sure you contact your Kingdom Exchequer, because she is the one who's actually in charge of you. Not your branch seneschal, not the Kingdom seneschal. Your Kingdom Exchequer is your person that basically is your superior. Yes, you have to work with your financial committee and all that stuff, but know your rules. And so what we're going to go into here is basically showing the different reporting things and talk about the transactions, and then talk about the actual report itself, since we have
Hey,
so many
Antoinette,
people.
real quick,
Yeah,
let me interrupt.
yeah,
I
please.
put in the chat a bit.ly link, and that is the collection of training documents that is hosted by the Inland's Exchequer Reporting Deputies SharePoint. So it is a SharePoint link. It may get a little funny if you're trying to log in using your non-on-tier. If you're logged into Office with a non-on-tier account, you may get some weirdness. So you may have to make sure you are not logged into an Office or work account, or logged in as your on-tier account. And if that makes less sense right now, we can talk about it later. But just so you know.
Thanks. I appreciate that. All right. So there's several different ways to record your information, and there are several different ways of actually taking that information and putting it into the report. There's this report here, and this one actually has the journal. You can see down here the journal built into the report, and as you tab over, you can see it goes into the balance sheet and the income statement, and then of course we have the assets and stuff. This report is while many people like to use it, the report side of things, I believe, Aislinn, is this not true? We have a new form we're supposed to be using, correct?
Yes, we're supposed to be using the new form.
Right. How new is it?
I believe it's last year.
Okay. So this one is not that one. This one is one that quite a few people use, and then they just take the information and put it into the new report format. We have asked many times to have this be used and attached to the new report, but the reports keep changing, so that makes it a little more difficult. So let's talk a little bit about terminology.
Etienne?
We have some questions.
Yeah.
Alessandra here. Can you blow this up? I put my glasses on and I still need to get super close.
Okay.
Can you explain what this is? I understand
Yes,
it.
that's where I'm going.
Okay, good. I understand
Yeah.
it's a spreadsheet, but
Yeah, just let me get
Bottom right corner, you should be able to do that. But
Come
that
on.
works too.
There we go.
no, that's even smaller.
No, it went backwards. Just give me a second. There, is that better?
Much. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. So
I have one quick question, dear. You're showing us what is currently listed as SCA Ledger version 3.
Correct.
So it's not the current one. You're showing us version
Correct.
3.
I
Okay.
what
So
I'm
it is
showing,
the document that I got already. Thank you.
Yes.
It looks right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. This actually is old information. This is an old Madrona one. This is the one I use for training because it usually has a whole bunch of really weird transactions on it that we basically discuss how to deal with them. But that's not this training. This is more of a 101 or 101, excuse me. Okay, so this here is your journal. It basically is the same thing as your check register, if those that actually used to write checks. It's where you would basically, handwrite, only it's in a spreadsheet form. Check 101 was made out to so-and-so, this is how much it is, and then you use that to reconcile your bank account. Those of us that actually still reconcile our personal bank accounts. So that's what this is. You hear it's also called a register, it's called a journal, it's called a general ledger, it's all called all kinds of things. But what you just basically need to remember is this is where you keep track of the transactions for your group, if that makes sense. you basically write, okay, so here we go. We wrote check number 2065. It was written on 1/5. It was to the UPS store for our PO box rental. And then over here we have withdrawals and deposits, and you put in here, you know, the check withdrawal.
Antoinette, we have a question from Brenna and Glendiven.
Yep.
Is this a spreadsheet that's just sent to you by whoever is your previous Exchequer?
Should be.
Okay.
You should have some past digital copies of that, but just because that's what they used, you need to use what makes sense for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's an individual when it's not like on sheets or something.
I'm not
I mean,
sure I understand.
It's not a shareable document if it's just on my computer.
Correct.
Kind of. We can come back to that when I get to my part.
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Okay. So that basically this is the journal. Now I personally use a register. And this is just a straight spreadsheet that's basically just a straight register of, and I'm showing you basically the different tools that are out there. My register, same information's there. I have, you know, the date that the transaction happened. I have the check number, or if it was a deposit. I have who was to, what it was for. I have deposit information, and this is probably too small too, isn't it? Come on. What are you doing? Sorry, it's not there. Oh, that's way too big. For some strange reason, this is not allowing me to.
I think you should use the looking glass, the magnifying glass.
Yeah, that one isn't. Well, usually when I click zoom, it goes to where it's supposed to, but it's not working. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so basically we're back to, I have a tab, you can see down here, I have a tab for our checking and I have a tab for our savings. And basically it's the same thing. And here's my register balance. This is basically how much money I should have in the bank account after everything is cleared at that point in time. And as you can see, this is just a register. Come on, it's not tabbing. Why aren't you tabbing? There we go. Finally, let it loose. And basically, I'm keeping track of, over here, I have my income. I have the accounts receivable, transfers out, transfers in, and we'll get to what those are. I have OA expenses and event expenses. And this particular transaction was a web host reimbursement. And so it's basically under fees and honorariums. And we can get into later basically what the transactions are and how you classify them. But right now we're just showing you the tools that we have available to you. And then down at the bottom, at the end of each quarter, basically I have totals where I know what to put into my report.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What is OA?
OA, I will get that just one quick second and I'm going to have that. No, but very good, excellent question. So basically these are the numbers I would put into my report. So that's basically what I use when I am doing my report. Now back to OA and event and such. When you, excuse me, there are 3 classifications. There are basically 3 classifications for transactions. And they match up with the 990, which is the IRS reporting that the SCA has to do And for those that don't know, basically your report gets sent off to Kingdom. Kingdom, as Aislinn was talking about, gets rolled up and sent on to corporate. Corporate then takes all of the report, the Kingdom reports roll up, and then merges that into this great big report and sends it to the IRS. And that the title of that one is the 990. It's basically the reporting for nonprofits. And there are 3 classifications for transactions. One is office and admin. That's basically the administrative side of the SCA. There's activity related, which is basically events, all the transactions and expenses that go with running an event. That event could be, you know, anything from our big Kingdom events to fighter practice. That's still considered an event of the SCA. And then there's fundraising. Fundraising is basically mostly for external fundraising, where you buy a bunch of t-shirts and then sell them. So you wouldn't classify that as an event expense. They were purchased specifically for fundraising. So when you have basically a transaction that is for OA, you have to classify it as OA. And that comes, let me get back to the, unfortunately, if I had more screens, I'd share them all at the same time, but that's okay. And basically that's what it means. And let me show you the trial balance. And this is really small. And if you were using just basically that one journal, this is what it would look like: first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. And then the expenses, admin, event, and fundraiser. And then these would go correspond over to the report. Now, I know this stuff is kind of confusing until you actually get into the report side of things. So that's basically where I think I'm going to spend my time, is basically on the report. Since we had so many new people. So everything begins and ends with your journal. It's basically where you keep track of everything that you do. And then you take that information and transfer it over into the report side of things. Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody understand that? Whether it's, okay, whether that's a check, whether that's a deposit, whether that's anything, it all begins and ends with your journal. So let's start with the report. And I'm going to go to the other one because it's cleaner. There we go. So here's the first page of the report. And this, yes, this is in training one. So there's some things that are out of whack. And when you're doing the report, the blues, when you have these reports, the blue stuff is where you can actually edit the material. In other words, I can type in here. Any place that is white, you cannot edit. That's just a standard rule. So when you're starting this for the first year, for the new year, you basically type in your branch, you put who your seneschal's name, because your seneschal is just as it has to sign off on this. You put your name, you put your year, and then you put what quarter it is. And the reason why you put what quarter it is if you notice, I have to do this on all the pages here. There we go. As soon as I change this to say quarter one, it changes. I don't know if you saw this, but this changed. So that basically sets off what period you're in. Put this back to 4. All righty. So this, and then you put next, you put in your contact information. It's basically when your warrant's up, and mine's up. This is actually an old report. So mine's actually up in November of 23. Who's basically in charge and who your deputy is. The next tab is basically your primary account reconciliation. This is basically how you, and you should actually be doing this once a month. You should be reconciling your bank statement. Put in your bank name, and the corporate does track this. But this is basically your primary account reconciliation. Starts with the balance of the bank statement. I'm assuming everybody understands how to reconcile a bank account. Yes?
Yes, and Etienne, there's a question in the audience.
Okay, yes, what?
Duncan? There's a hand raised at least.
You're muted. I can't hear you if you're saying anything.
I'm trying to ask a question. How about
Yes,
now?
There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
There we go. We can hear you
Oh,
now.
the joys of technology. Just making sure the report you're using is cumulative or sequential.
It's always cumulative. Sequential went out the door about 10 years ago. Always
chance we-
cumulative.
Any chance it can get removed from the form then? Since the word is there?
That's
On the
that's
current version of
right.
the form, that drop down only has
Cumulative.
in there in the drop down.
Right. I'm showing you this one because it has information in it. And the only difference is just a couple of different things in it. So I'm using this one just because not much has changed. The only thing that really has changed is it's added a couple of sheets, I believe for donations. I think that's the only difference, right? I think that's the only difference. But basically the information is the same. And everybody, there are so many people are still using the old ones. So I kind of want to show this stuff. So if everybody understands how to use this particular form, yes, how to reconcile their bank statement, I can move on. Yes.
Yes, for me.
Okay. All right, great. So basically it's some of the things I would point out. You need to make sure that this says yes if you actually get interest from your bank. And this information will not transfer to the balance sheet unless this is 0 right here. If you are out of whack on this particular form, it will not transfer automatically to the balance sheet, and we'll get to the balance sheet. Same with the secondary. This has to be green before it'll actually transfer to the balance sheet. All right. Oops. Wrong one here. Okay, so the balance sheet. This is actually the balance sheet. You actually don't use this much, except put in your starting numbers, which we will cover later. And this always makes us happy because it's green. That's usually the only reason, the only thing that you will actually use and look at the balance sheet for is to make sure your starting numbers are happy and that this is happy. Most of the work happens here, which is the income statement. And this is basically where you take all the information from the journal and put it into. Again, if you have blue, you can edit. But if it's white, it's actually coming from a different sheet and transferring the information from that sheet to here. And where you find, let's make this even a little bigger so that people can see it better. There we go. Where you'll find that information comes from is basically right here. So the information for this number, which was basically fundraising, comes from the sheet number, and you can see the sheet numbers down here. This is asset, income is number 4, asset is number 5A, is coming from 11A. Interest earned basically is that's a fillable thing, and that where you will just have to take the total off your journal to input. Same, this is the income side of things. Here's your income from demos, adjusted gross event income, any transfers you got from other people. As you can see, we got a check from another group, your interest. Sales, if you have it, very few people actually use this. Same with net advertising income. The only ones that actually I've seen that use was June Fair, because they used to sell advertising in their books very, 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 very long time ago. Okay, so, and also the crier. The crier used to do that too. Down here, of course, you'll have your bank service charges you can fill in. Depreciation, you will never have to worry about depreciation. That is an automatic thing coming over from the depreciation schedule once you've set your stuff up. Equipment maintenance, that you fill in yourself. Fees and honorariums, that comes from a sheet, and it comes from 12A. Food, all the blue stuff, as I said, fills in yourself. Any questions about this section before we move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why are bank service charges activity related instead of office and administration?
Because it was a bounce check for an event.
Ah, okay.
Because there's the office and administration. Okay, so if you have any questions about transactions, make sure you say something. I'm sure more will come as we get into things. When you will see those is basically, your $3 a month check fee where they charge you to have an account there. Your any stop payments from any of your checks, say your check went awry and didn't arrive, so you put a stop payment on it and they charge you $35 to do so. That's where you'd put that. Make sense?
Yep, got it
Okay,
now.
great. Okay, so the next session down below is the donations, other expenses, donations to other 501c3s, and basically transfers out where, like this within Kingdom, we sent money to the Kingdom for NMR. And then also you can see it also comes in from a different sheet. It comes in from sheet 10. And then outside of Kingdom, we purchased insurance. So that was the transfers out for that. Also comes from sheet 10. And this is basically, this last line is basically how well we did that year. And it ended up being a loss for us. It was a change in assets. All right. The next sheet is basically any of our assets. And just real fast, we'll go through this one pretty fast. This is where you take the information and put it to. Receivables, this is of course where you put your anybody you gave money to for gate seed for any of your events. It is a receivable because you gave this person money and basically they have to return that money to you, or it's owed back to you because you gave this person money. If it happens within the same quarter, I typically don't fill this in, but if it crosses a quarter, or I fill it in to keep track of it, but usually it ends up coming back to zero. Your current amount. By the time it happens, it comes back to zero. The only time it's a really big deal is if you're changing, if it crosses quarter, say the event was at the end of March and you gave the gate seed money in, this week for an event next week, but you don't actually get the money back into the account until April, which of course is the new quarter, then it's really important to fill that out. And we can, if you have questions about that, we can cover it. Again, prepaid expenses. As you can see here, we had 12th night site deposits. So that happened again, if it happens within the same quarter, just put it into occupancy and rent, basically equipment rental, or not equipment rental, excuse me, occupancy, basically rent to run the event. But as you can see here, at the end of 2022, we had a site deposit out. So basically the current amount would be 250 because the event is not happening until 2023, and this is the end of 2024. Other assets, you will not use this a lot unless you're actually doing security deposits. And the one thing I will say about that is make sure that when you're doing security deposits, it is an actual security deposit and not a deposit on the site. There's two different things for that. The security deposit will be returned to you. If it's just a deposit, it won't be. That's the difference between these two here. These were deposits for actually using the site and counted against our rent. It wasn't a security deposit for when we're getting it back. All right, liabilities. Deferred revenue. Basically, the deferred revenue, the only people that really use that are people who are going, okay, so what deferred revenue is, basically you did pre-reg on an event, but in one quarter, but the event doesn't happen until next quarter. Again, if it's happening within the same year, if you're a real geek about it and want to really track it quarter to quarter, you can. But if the only people that I really see this are those people that are using it and taking money for an event in, say, November and December, but not, the event doesn't happen until January, February, except Ursulmus is a big one for that. And 12th night is if you actually run 12th night and have a pre-reg account for that, that's the only time you're going to see that or should use it. If it's happening within the same year, new Exchequer specifically, unless you're really geeking out about it and want to and take and use it to its fullest extent, go ahead and use this. But if it's happening within the same year, just record it. Don't set yourself up to have a problem. And Trent will go into, or Thorkel will go into that when he talks about common problems that you have for balancing. Payables, same. With the payables, very few people use this anymore. Some of the biggest mistakes I've seen are people who use this and they keep the payables on this report for years and years and years and years and years, even though they ran the check already. I would just say don't use it, honestly. Other liabilities, same. Really don't use this unless directed to by our fearless leader. All right. Oh, any questions before I move on to this? Nope. Okay. Inventory. Very few people actually use this unless you're actually going to purchase t-shirts. Honestly, but if you guys decide to do something like that, make sure you reach out to your Kingdom Exchequer or your Principality Exchequer before you start really using this. Again, in my time as a Kingdom Exchequer, where we had problems was because people were using this and then stopped using it, and they got rid of the t-shirts, but didn't actually clear it off this report. And that happens a lot, especially if they were purchased in the tenure of one exchequer and it continues through a couple of exchequers, and they don't actually do an inventory or whatever. Remember, we're all volunteers. So honestly, I would just say don't use it unless you're planning to do something really super big. Regalia sales. This is for regalia and non-depreciable equipment.
Which is going away.
Which is going away. Yep. And other sales income. Excuse me. This is if you were you purchased like a box of No World handbooks and you sold them, but you didn't really, buy enough to make it to the big major inventory. This spreadsheet here. That is this spreadsheet. And you would just type in, No World handbooks, how many you sold, and what was the income. It basically is a catch-all for like pewter. We sold pewter tokens, the leftover pewter tokens. So this is basically where we would put this information. We sold, I'm sorry?
Anita would like to know not things like pavilions, tables, or etc. owned by the Barony.
Yeah, no, that's not that. This is minor income. This is not that sort of thing. It's basically just little stuff that you've gathered and sold. Released or sold assets. You will not use this unless directed to by your Kingdom Exchequer. And if you ever do sell a pavilion, or you had a trailer stolen, or anything like that, make sure you discuss it with your Kingdom Exchequer, because this is a little more, it's a challenge because it can mess up your report really, really fast. So make sure you're talking to her. The depreciation schedule. How many people know what depreciation is? And do you want me to go into a explanation of what it is and why? Do I assume? Yes, no, move on.
10,000 foot view maybe, but
10,000.
not
Okay.
too deep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So basically the IRS, when you're purchasing something over, I believe it's $2,500 is the current, and Aislinn, you might correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't actually deal with depreciation. That's a tax reporting thing. And some of the rules have changed, as only the IRS can do. So basically it's over, this says 500, it's actually over 2,500 now, but most of the corporate wants us to track anything that we have purchased for big ticket items. Pavilions typically, especially now, are way over that. As you can see, most of these for when we purchased them were much smaller. And basically what that is you've purchased something for $2,500. The life of the asset is considered, in this one, 7 years. And then basically that's it's basically for all assets except electronic equipment and trailers, thrones, cooking, or except electronics and trailers. Thrones, pavilions, cooking equipment are all considered 7-year assets. Although why you'd do cooking equipment, I'm not sure. But that's okay. And basically they take the cost of that item and spread it out over 7 years, and the expense of that, and you only expense that certain portion of it once a year at the end of the year, and that's called depreciation. Does that make sense for everybody? So basically, as you can see, we have our Eric. It was actually purchased in 1990. This would never have made it on to the books nowadays, but back in 1990, it did. And then you see all of our other things. The only thing we have left that's depreciable is our Baronial Pavilion. And we only had, it's actually finished being depreciated this year. So that's basically that. And if you have more questions about this, I know we're taking the fast route on this. If you have more questions about this, make sure you let us know. Most of the time when you're setting up your new report, excuse me, we'll copy and save and it will adjust automatically. The macros in here will adjust automatically for you. But you won't really use this throughout the year, except at the end. On the income station, or income spreadsheet, depreciation will only show up as soon as you move into the fourth quarter. Otherwise, you don't have to do anything with it.
So Anita has, I have a small business with depreciation assets. Looking at this form, the numbers for current value didn't change from year to year, which is not how I know how to do depreciation.
I'm sorry.
The numbers on the form you were showing didn't change.
No, cost or current value, that does not change.
Like I said,
Basically, this does not change. This is what we purchased it at. This stays the same. What
Right, but
changes is this.
okay.
I think because of the age of it also, doesn't after a certain time it stops depreciating?
Yeah, after 7 years. But you have to keep it on there.
So everything she has on there, Anita, is more than 7 years old.
Correct.
There's also the thing that you kind of wrap your brain around is this. It's your barony or your group's report, but it's a fraction of OnTier's report, which is a fraction of society's report.
Correct. And once you enter something into this report, this never changes. Because if you change this, it changes the depreciation. This is what you purchased it at. It always stays the same.
Okay. I'll do it your way.
Yeah, this always stays the same. And you really, once you set it up, you really don't have to mess with it anymore. It will automatically do things for you. Yeah.
In the accounting world, hi, it's Anastasia from Ramsgard and Principality of Thierry. In the accounting world, it would never touch your asset account, which is what this is showing. Your depreciation is a separate account, so it's not going to show there anyways. You're always going to carry it at the asset amount.
Correct. That is correct. That is correct. All right. Any other questions about depreciation before we move on?
No.
Okay. I know it's a tough one. Okay. So transfers in. As you can see here, news funds received from PayPal get reported on 11B. This is not, this is basically funds transferred within the SCA, within the same kingdom, in the same country. Now, if I was to get a check from Madrona from, say, Dragon's Lair, or not Dragon's Lair, Lionsgate, that would be reported differently. Basically, this is where, if this was Lionsgate's report, this would mean everybody up in Tier E within the same kingdom. That's where they would put these. But because Madrona is US, this is where I'm putting all of anything, any group within on tier within the same country. that makes sense. As you can see, we got a check from a corner beer and I got a check from PDL. You please, 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 please make sure that you put the check number and the date received and the amount in there. Don't, because I've seen reports that basically would say corner beer and then just the amount. Well, our fearless leader has to reconcile every single transfer within the kingdom. And if she doesn't have this information, it makes it super hard to do. Okay, so next is funds transferred to another SCA account outside of Kingdom. What?
I have something to add to that.
Yeah.
Also putting, if it's for an event, if you're sharing costs for an event, I would maybe add a side note in there, shared costs for Autumn War, like we share with Glumere, because of their event is before ours, so we share like costs, and then we give each other's checks for, you know, to balance that out, because one group pays for it. Also, because that also helps as you get into sending your checks, because if you're sending them for NMR and stuff, if you put what event they're for, as you're going outside into sending checks to Kingdom, it's easier for her to match it up when she goes
Right.
to look at both reports.
Well, you'll see that when we get to transfers out. But yeah, this, you can put in here as much information as you want it to be. I have that information in my register. I just didn't transfer it to my report.
Right, but
that's up to.
Always look at. She doesn't get the register. She looks at all of these when she does that final roll up, right?
She has the register. We are required to send the register to them. So, but yes, as much information as you want. I mean, she doesn't necessarily need to know why she got information, why a corner bear sent me a check, but she needs to know that the check was there. But any information you put in here is up to you. It's whatever your little geeky heart wants to do.
And I would say that if you're getting multiple checks throughout the year from the same branch, then maybe sync them up for me with what it's for.
Right. That's the way Aza wants it. That's the way she gets it.
Please.
There you go. So transfers in from outside the kingdom within the same country. Again, that means something different in Tier E as it does in, if they got a check from Abacal, because they had shared revenue for a war they did between each other, that's where, you know, you would basically be getting information there. Transfers out, as you can see here, with this, I put NMR, Kingdom of Ontir, check number, the date, and the amount. And this is basically, as you can see, most of it was NMR, or actually we sent money out for our portion owed to the kingdom for 12th night. And this will give the NMR, and you can see why would we sent them their portion of the amount for the profits. And then down here, we basically, this is where you'd put funds transferred out to another SCA account. And this is really super important here. We reimbursed Maddie for insurance with a check number, a date, an amount. It's super important to put the person's name here, because corporate, I believe, Aislinn, you still have to put that information in the roll-up. Yes, since it was paid by credit card.
Yes.
So that's really super important, because that needs to be reconciled at the corporate level. And the only way they get that information is from you because she has to put that on the roll-up, and then it all flows uphill or downhill, depending on how you look at it. So again, really important, if someone else paid for it, if the branch didn't pay for it, if someone else paid for it, you need to put the person's name there. And you should have that when you, in your journal. And then outside kingdom, same thing. If we were sending something to another kingdom. Okay, so income 11A.
Sorry, I just wanted to put out there that that should be your modern name, not the SCA name.
Correct. Oh, yeah, good point. Maddie is, yeah, it should be modern name. Okay, so here's basically.
And really, it should be whatever the name on the credit card is, honestly.
Correct.
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so the purchasing of insurance basically is the named insurance. And usually it's done by the event steward. Sometimes it's done by the group. It just depends on how it's handled in your group. In this case, it was, let's go back, I'll go back to this. It was Maddie, or Baroness Spike, for those that, she was the Baroness of Madrona, and she was the autocrat for the event. She purchased the named insurance because the site required it. And then we, as Madrona, reimbursed her. She paid for it through the portal of the SCA and paid for it via credit card. That information needs to be on your report, the name who the person who purchased it, because corporate has to match things up. That information goes to on Aislinn's report, and then that report goes to corporate, and then they match things up at the corporate level. Does that make sense?
So as I understand it, even though she lives in the kingdom, she's not considered part of the kingdom per se.
Correct. But money, okay, so here's the lecture about the big pot of SCA money. You may think of the money in your bank account as yours. It's not. It's the SCA's. It's not your branch's money. Yes, you have stewardship over it. You basically use it to run your group. It is not your money. It is the SCA's. And they can at any time come and take that money away because it's not your money. As we saw with the big insurance payment we had to do with the lawsuit. Some of you may remember it, some of you might. I'm not going to go into it, but we had to basically send a goodly portion of our money to the SCA. So it's a big pot, and transfers within the groups have to be recorded because it's just a big pot of money for them. In other words, if I send money to Ywood, it's still SCA money and it's not considered income for Ywood. It's just transferring money within the big SCA family. It's not actually income for that group. We're just moving money around like pieces on a chessboard, right?
If I may interject really quickly, all SCA funds are one giant workbook.
Correct.
Every branch account is its own tab, but it all rectifies to the same total summary. And this is based on how they the nonprofit status, all accounting, all funds. So if you think of it that way, we simply have one. If you have a checkbook or you are doing Exchequer, you are doing one little jar in an entire pantry. Okay.
Does that make sense? Or did we just confuse you more than? So that's why tracking the transfers in and transfers out and people who basically send money to society, that's why we have to know these things. It all rolls uphill. Does that make sense? And I'm sorry I keep asking this, but with everybody's, video off and not being in person, it's really hard to gauge who's understanding and who isn't. And it's hard not seeing facial expressions. So anyway, back to that. So back to income. This is this internal fundraising, basically are where you would put any donations internally, meaning they came from members of your group or from an event. And that's where you would track that sort of thing. And there's a whole class on what we can do for fundraising and what it means to be internal and external. External is basically things we got from outside our members. In other words, you did a car wash, and you did it in medieval garb. The fundraising for that would be here because you're not collecting money from our members. Okay, excuse me. Now we go to part B, which is the tracking the income from events. And here you can see now you can use as many lines as you want to on these. I happen to separate 12th night basic from 12th night merchants because they match up to the deposits in my journal. And that makes it much easier to track. If you ever get off, you can go to this event and go, okay, here's the 12th night 1 deposit, here's 12th night 2nd deposit, here's 12th night 3rd deposit, and name them. Do what works for you. This is what works for me. And basically, this is where I put all of the income, and these are matching your bank deposits, not PayPal. PayPal deposits are PayPal pre-reg deposits are and credit card processing are recorded elsewhere. Excuse me. And we'll get into that more when we do the PayPal talk. So 12 night Audio Athenaeum Gate Pre. Here I had refunds, of course, for Pre, which the people never actually cashed their checks, so I voided them out this year. Thank you for your donation. So it would be basically, and this is with NMR. This is total income with including NMR. This is why it matches up to your deposits. It's everything you collected for that event, and that has to be tracked because we have to basically give corporate how much money we made on an event. Down here is PayPal income, and this was basically the credit cards and the pre-reg. And you can see here with us, we had PayPal donation, basically the 12th night PayPal income that was from credit cards and pre-reg. And then we had PayPal donations because that was the first 12th night back, and all of I think the weather gods conspired against us. Nobody could get to 12th night except those along the I-5 corridor. And even that was iffy because they did close south. So people were very generous and helped us make our pay our expenses and make sure that the kingdom got some money for being able to run. But so here's all of the the PayPal income. Net advertising income, as I said, most people don't use that. Other income, this is where you would put stale checks and not, basically recovered bad debt, that sort of thing. If you ever, I'm not going to go into this here because that's a very specific thing that you have to cover. We can do a whole talk on what to do with NMS checks, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Income 11C. All right. This is where you would get money from any other group that is basically non-SCA. And they just handed you some money. It's basically a donation. Not necessarily your, it basically external. It would have been from anybody who wasn't an SDA member. Very rarely is this used. I don't think I've ever seen it on a local level. Donations, SCA rate, excuse me. Sorry, I'm getting a little dry. This section is actually used if you receive money from, and it's usually used mostly on the kingdom level, because any money that comes in from Tier E basically goes here because it's considered a donation. Same holds true if I were to send money to Lionsgate, it would be considered a donation. We're not, because it crosses the international boundary, it is not considered transferring money between all of the, lower 48 SCA groups. Or if with us, it would be, excuse me. Or if that group is a subsidiary, and I think they're starting to do away with subsidiaries, and it's not used on our level. Let's just put it that way. That hopefully that makes sense. So, all right, on to expense detail. Advertising, non-SCA. Again, blue, you would fill that out. Again, this is all coming from your register. Excuse me, bad debts. This is where you would put if you basically wrote off a check that bounced. Hopefully you've collected it and you don't have to fill this out. Here's, you can see where you would choose AR, FR, and this basically correlates back to where it would show up on your income statement. One note about, and the reason why it's very important to put the person, and basically reason is what I usually filled out what event and what happened. The reason why you want to put the person is because we actually had a merchant many years ago who was bouncing checks all over the known world. And at a certain point, it becomes fraud. And you may only see they, bounced your $30 check. Well, they may have been bouncing $30 checks to a myriad of people within the SCA and crossed kingdom. And the only way that it gets caught is when the roll-ups come in and corporate can see that it now amounts to about $1,500 worth of bounce checks. So that's why. Okay, so fees and honorariums, as you can see here, fees and honorariums, basically, this is where you put website payments. This is to Melinda Rowena. She basically was covering our website payments and an add-on that we used for Athenaeum. You would also put trailer tabs. Someone would pay the trailer tabs for your trailer. There's all kinds of, you paid an honorarium to a teacher to have them come teach. It's really important to track that sort of thing because, especially the honorariums, because once you hit over $600, the SEA has to send them a 1099.
Duncan, did you have any further questions about honorariums? I see you have in here when she was back on something else that you asked if something was like an honorarium.
What was the question?
He said, I missed it when he asked it. He said, is that like an honorarium? I don't know what you were on.
I believe it was when you were discussing donations from non-SCA individuals.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure, sorry.
And then you have another question.
Yep, he says it's answered.
Okay.
It looks like we have a hand up though.
Yeah. I always say the name wrong, so I'm not gonna.
It's Siobhan.
Siobhan. I'm gonna write that down.
Oh shoot, I was just looking at something different. Oh, it'll come back to me. I'm sorry. I'll lower my hand. Oh.
No. Yeah, please make sure you pipe up when you see, because break in and ask the question, because I think
once we start talking, we'll just continue to talk. And you really have
exactly.
to just like, you have to hammer us with, hey, I got a question.
Hey, I got a question. Exactly. I can't see hands up because I'm focusing on my other screen. So
speaking of like something that you told me wouldn't take an hour, you have 7 minutes.
Say that again, dear. You're breaking up.
You have 7 minutes.
Oh,
Anita,
7 minutes.
Anita, AR is activity related and FR is fundraiser. And that's that OA, AR, FR.
Yeah, if you missed that from the beginning. Okay, so I'll speed this up a little bit. Other expenses, insurance, SCA, other expenses. Never, ever use this unless the Kingdom Exchequer tells you to do so. Enough said. Donations to the SCA, say you did an event that you wanted to raise money for the Red Cross. That's where this would go. Make sure you have a federal ID number from them and put it in here. That is absolutely required. If they do not have a federal ID number, it's probably not an actual legit nonprofit. Next one here is basically your financial committee, and you have to choose what makes up your financial committee. And it's whether you make sure you always have an odd amount. This actually, at the end, we have a new Baron and Baroness, so this changes for 2023. This basically, as you can see here, that you can fill in. Now you need to make sure you remember that only members can be part of the financial committee. Funds. This basically comes from your balance sheet. And then if you have any dedicated funds, and to give the canned lecture on what are restricted and unrestricted funds, because you will hear that. Basically, we hold funds for the Equestrian Guild. We will have St. Bunny's, which they've pretty much gone away, but we still have the money. And then Rapier has $280. And then this is non-dedicated funds or unrestricted. All of these actually are unrestricted. And then the total of that. So restricted and unrestricted funds. A good example of restricted funds is basically the Ravens Travel Fund. That is a restricted fund. That was set up by Barrick and Lau so that there would be an avenue for which our king and queen could go outside of the kingdom. This is for outside of kingdom travel only, and there are very specific instances in where they can use it. And this is the only restricted fund that we as a kingdom have. You need to be super careful with restricted funds and unrestricted funds, or dedicated or non-dedicated is kind of an easier way to look at it. Because if you set yourself up, hey, we're going to raise funds for a pavilion, a new pavilion, or a new trailer. If you say, don't give yourself an out and basically say, dedicated funds, we're going to basically use it for, sorry, I'm starting to get a little rummy here. We're talking for so long. We are going to buy a pavilion, and it's also going to cover the maintenance for it. And if we don't use that up in give yourself a time limit, 1 year, 2 years, it'll go back to the general fund. Because if you say we're going to raise it for the pavilion and the pavilion alone, and you have leftovers, you will never be able to use it for anything else but a pavilion. So always give yourself an out. And that's it for me, I guess, because I'm 2 minutes away. Any other questions? I know this was really fast. We actually usually spend a lot more time on this particular subject because we have so many new people. I wanted to be able to go over that. Now, where you get all of this information, all the information that you basically you fill in here to recap, goes back to your income statement. And where you get all of this information where that's blue, see, like here's my depreciation. You saw my fees and honorarium. Up here, you saw my adjusted gross income. That all came from that report. Now you've seen the back reports for that. These actually come from your register. And I have a tendency to use just something really simple for me. Problem is I can't see my, there we go. And that also is all fed from basically your journal. And Trent's going to talk about, Thorkel is going to talk about basically if you're having problems balancing and what to look for. Any other questions? Yes, no, maybe.
I don't think so.
Anyone else?
There's no more in chat. You had covered it.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Does everyone want
Okay.
to take a few minutes to stand up, dance around in a little jig, get some stretching?
I'm going to get some water because my throat's going.
That's a brilliant idea.
That sounds like a great idea.
I'm going to share my screen. For those of you that have Zoom, or Zoom questions, how does that look size-wise?
That looks good. Thank you.
Yep. It's one of those things, like I have a large TV that I work off of, so I have to remember to shrink it down into smaller sections for people. Otherwise, they're like, I can't see any of that.
Also, thank you, Kira, for the link to where the ledgers are. I discovered mine is out of date and I will need to make some updates.
Maybe, maybe not.
Really?
I'll get there. I'll get there.
Brent, are you going to get there before noon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm going to get there in the next 5 minutes. How's that?
Awesome.
My wife just gave me a look.
I just want to know before I have to watch the video.
Fair enough. All right. So I can't see if everyone's back, but I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So the current form that we can download is from the SCA page. They have put out that they don't want people turning in any of the older forms. So, awesome that they are keeping track and keeping up to date and making changes to the forms. Also, it sucks because the new forms suck. And that is my official position. And I have made that known. So from the main SCA page over here is the document library. You open up the document library, and about 3/4 of the way down is group financial report forms. There is a ledger spreadsheet, and then there is spreadsheet versions of small branch, medium branch, and large branch. Pretty much everyone should be using the medium branch spreadsheet locked to turn in their report at the end of the year. That's a very important caveat because it doesn't have everything that you need. Now, the downside of doing it that way is because the ledger is a separate form from the SCA, you will either have to send the actual worksheet that you are using with the ledger attached to it to your reporting deputy, or recreate the ledger on the official form when you send it. Because when you turn in your report at the end of the year, you need to turn in the report as well as the ledger. There are some groups who, I'll come to that. I'll come back to that in a minute. So I have on the other tabs open the spreadsheets from the Canton of Cornbury, which was the branch I was the Exchequer from for the next 4 days. And every account has access to the Office 365 online. It will run the Excel spreadsheets with a couple of caveats. There's a couple of bits of macros that don't run because they don't run in Office 365, but they'll tell you, like you can see here, you get this add-in error.
Thorkel, quick question.
Yes, yes.
Which report do Canadians use? Because sometimes we had to use a different one in the past, so I'm wondering if that has been updated.
Currently, they are using the same form because contents. It will have, actually, let me give you the official one. It still has the drop down of the various currencies that goes under there. Okay, everyone should be using only one currency, US dollars for the US branches, Canadian dollars for the Canadian branches. Where it's going to get funky is the European ones, because they have different currencies and they have to fight with that. I don't have to deal with that. Anyway, so
thank you.
This is, yes, no problem. This is the report that I prefer to use. As you can see across the bottom here, they have split out the quarters by, instead of having one journal page, they split it up into multiple per each quarter. I find it easier to work with only because I don't have to scroll as much to go back and forth between. But yeah, so this is the one, I believe in the list is listed as the new one. Any of them that work, or any of them will work for the day-to-day, month-to-month. It's just at the end of the year that you need to be on the official one. So what I did here is I filled everything out. I ran, month to month. I turned in my quarterlies in PDF. I, had my seneschal sign the appropriate pages. I did all of those things. And then at the end of the year, I took all of this information and I printed out a hard copy and I downloaded the form and I filled it out. it can be a little bit onerous if you have a lot of things, but I find it's a little bit easier to not have to worry about making the changes, and it's less transcription errors because you're only doing it once. You're not having to switch back and forth between the journal and the report and doing the math on the journal versus the report and back and forth. So,
Okay.
and I mean, that's when I was the reporting deputy, that's what I would tell people to do, is continue doing what form you like, what one works for you. Realize that you have to turn in the one that looks like this, print it out in paper copy, bring up Excel on the other sheet. I mean, if you got enough space, you can have 2 copies of Excel running, and you could do it that way. I found it easier to print, and then I could look at the page and I could make sure I got everything, little check marks that I'm done, set that page aside. That works for me. You can see the online version, everything works. It does all of the things that it needs to do. We don't have any extra accounts because we're a canton and we're little and tiny. You know, you're filling in a couple things because you see, you know, these ones you fill in, they're pulling from other places, or you can type them in. We ran into problems early on where people would make a change here, but not fix it on the actual report or other places, because there are some places where you can do that. Does that make sense? Any questions on that one?
That makes sense. So I'm seeing up in the top left, you've got version ASL, I'm thinking it says 6 medium. And the one that you were using, this is for the year end. The one you were using for the quarter to quarter was 4.5.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So the ones with the journals were done by Yolanda when she was the Kingdom Exchequer. Correct me if I'm wrong. And when she became Society Exchequer, she would still allow them, but then now that she's no longer Society Exchequer, the Society has added things that needed to be changed, which weren't included in the form that Alonda had done. So they have done that. And basically, from what I remember, the difference is really, let me get to a page and show you the difference. It's that the older forms, there's an error in this income detail part 3 because that was added super late. That's how, yeah, okay, thanks. I say it works, it doesn't always work. We had to start breaking down how we were getting donations, because the IRS wanted to know, you know, it used to be we had donations and it was one lump sum, and the IRS started asking questions about, hey, where did this money actually come from? Who did it come from? You know, because honestly, a lot of what we do looks like money laundering. We get a whole bunch of cash on a random weekend and deposit it into a bank account and write a check. It looks like money laundering. So it raises flags. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I'm running this off of, you know, Office 365. It runs, it works just fine. For the Canton, will run it off of this because there's nothing complicated to the report that I need to run the other things. The next bit I'm going to talk about is talking about issues. I'm using screenshots from the version prior to this because it was over the last couple of years prior to this, using the full downloaded version. Because when I was the Berenice Canton, when I was the Berenice Exchequer, I found it easier to run the full version of Excel because there was more automatic things it was doing. So some of the things in the next bit don't necessarily apply, but they're still good bits of information to have. And I just realized that my camera's not on. I was a bad boy for a meeting. Hi, everybody. Let's go. File. We're going to share this. No, we're not going to share this. We're going to. It's a PowerPoint because I wrote a PowerPoint. Everybody loves PowerPoints, right? Home file. I want to show the damn PowerPoint. I want to show the slideshow. There we go. From the beginning. And we'll share Zoom. The PowerPoint. Share. So this is from 2019. The dates. Okay, so what I did here is I was for about 4 years or so, or longer than that at that point, but or at this point, for about 4 years up to this point, I was the Inlands Regional Reporting Deputy. So all of the Inlands branches would send me their reports, and I would make sure that they were good, they balanced, and I would pass them off to Kingdom. People then would also say, "Hey, I can't get this balance. I have an error. What's wrong?" Which, if you do get stuck, ask. It's quite often it's something that you didn't see or you missed or you overlooked, or it's a little tiny thing that you're missing, but you've been staring at this document for so long that your brain just misses it completely. You can ask on the email list if anyone is still using it. I don't think anyone actually still is. You can ask on the Facebook group. You can message people. You can email Aislinn. You can email any of the regional reporting deputies. I will pass along my Facebook and email information if anybody wants it. I want to help. So the early things that happened a lot was that the dates weren't updated when you switched between a quarter. So you were in quarter 2, you went to quarter 3, you're entering details, but you didn't change the report to tell them you were now in quarter 3. So the macros weren't looking in those sections for those things, or it wasn't updating. There's 2 places that you had to do that. Section number 1 is on the contents page where it's what quarter you're in, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's right here. Ooh, there we go. And the other one was on the accounts page where you had to give the statement end date. And that, since you're doing that accounts page reconciliation every month, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you should be changing that every month. It gets easier to remember to do that if you're actually doing it that way. Sometimes on the forms on the local version of Excel, it wouldn't check things that hadn't cleared. So on the journal entry, there's the box for when item has cleared. If it wasn't clearing, the report wasn't always checking it. So make sure that you had it there. There were things running on the report there were macros running on the report that would run when you actually saved the document. So I would tell people, do a save real quick, make sure it's run and you have the current, you've made all the changes. Starting figures, starting numbers. This is someone's Q1, Q2, and Q3, where they don't know why they did it. I asked them, they're like, I don't remember doing that. I think what had happened is they looked at the Q2, and when they started Q3, because they created, like, they saved a Q2 off and then created a new document for Q3 just so they had a Q2, and they looked at it and then went, oh, I need to change the starting numbers. The starting numbers are for the year, not the quarter. So you see 1875.15 for the first quarter, 1875.15 for the second quarter, but you can kind of see the 2608. Well, they put 2608 in the starting number for the third quarter, which, since they're cumulative, messes everything up. Now, real quick on the starting numbers. Your starting numbers should not change. They should be the ending numbers from the previous year with an asterisk that the Kingdom Exchequer may tell you to change those numbers. They may do something, tweak something to make the report work, make an alteration somewhere else that will change your number. If they're on the ball, which they always have been, they should tell you in the first couple of months, at least by the end of the first quarter, because usually those numbers come out, or those numbers will need to be changed based on things in the roll-up. The roll-ups due by tax season, so they should know those things in the first bit. But make sure that if they do tell you, there's a reason that they tell you the numbers, and then you'll have to go back and change from when you're told those numbers changed, that information, and then continue to fix it on. The bits about NMR now, and income being added to your gate, make sure that your adjusted gross and event income matches the total of the gate and the event. You see here, they only put $310 as the income from the event and $100 as the gate seed money, but they listed it $410 as the gross income, where it really should have been $310. So keep that in mind. Someone described it as aggravating and confusing with this report, and I can understand that one. So if you get to that point, understand it's okay. The bit of the journal page, the bit of the reconciliation page, this is not your journal. So I've seen small branches where they go, oh, the starting number is the beginning number of the quarter, and these are all the checks and deposits I did this quarter. This is things that haven't cleared that you've written, or checks that you've written that haven't cleared, or deposits that you've made that don't show up to match. This is not your journal. If you need a journal and don't have one and don't want to use the other one, there's other ways to do it. If the balance sheet number 3 doesn't balance, it stays yellow, and it tells you right here on the side how much you're off. That's bit. That bit will tell you how much it's off, and then you can kind of figure out where you need to go start searching. That's all done automatically, so it's helpful to do it. When your primary account page doesn't balance, you see how that is a yellow. It tells you how far you're off, and that's because your bank balance and your journal balance aren't matching. So if they don't match, they won't turn green. They won't fill into the other sheet. Everything cascades down through that. Yeah, so if your primary account isn't balanced, it's not going to show up on here, and that's not going to balance. But that's the one that you're going to see more often because it's more aggravating and yeah. So there's a couple of things that were stranger that took a little bit longer to find. Prepaid expenses, I will admit, I don't like using them. They're ugly. They don't make sense to my brain. So don't do it for gate seed unless you're doing a prepaid expense in December for an event in January. You don't need to carry it over. This one, and then you have to remember that your prior amount was how much the written was for. At the current amount, correct me if I'm wrong on this, yet, the current amount is how much is actually at the time of the report. So like this one, if you're using it, it goes to 0. If you haven't used it, it will be 500.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's always, the current amount. Prior amount's what carried over from the previous year.
Yeah. See, this is why I don't like doing it.
Yeah, correct.
If you've used it. Does your statement date match? If you'll notice that the statement date is the 10th of April on this particular form, most banks these days use end of month. I know Umpqua does not. If you have Umpqua, I'm sorry. I love them for personal stuff, for other things, but their balances are mid-month to mid-month, which drives me crazy. But make
You've
sure that you
got
do it, because
to
if
be kidding me.
no, I'm not. I think you can. I think their business accounts, you can set the date, but by default it's mid-month to mid-month.
Thank you for that heads up. Because Umpqua just bought Columbia Bank. I didn't realize that. I'm gonna have to make sure I fix that.
Yeah. Make sure, because if you have the statement date here, the 10th of April, and you wrote a check on the 11th of April, the system is not going to read that check because it's not on that month. It's on the quote unquote next month. So keep that in mind. You're sure your statement date matches? Double check, because I mean, also you have sometimes the last day is the 31st, but it's Sunday, so your statement date is going to be the Friday. Well, you wrote a check on Saturday, which is the 30th. It wouldn't be on your statement. So make sure that your statement date, that is the statement from the bank, matches what is actually on the statement from the bank. Dedicated funds. This is the dedicated fund list. If you do not have any dedicated funds, I don't know of many non-principality level groups, Madrona being the special one, because they are Madrona and they are special. Take that however you want to take that. I love you all. Your dedicated fund should match your balance at the end of the sheet. If it doesn't, you'll notice that you got a 0 up there. If it doesn't match, it's going to throw an error on the form. If you don't do anything but have a basic account, there's Excel tricks where you can do some funky stuff where you can set that that cell equal to the where it's coming from, and then you don't have to remember to change it. It'll do it automatically. But if you're using general fund or you're using dedicated funds, you'll have to make sure you're good there. Does your journal line entry match? If on the journal, you'll look and you'll see there's a section of where it should go on the report, and I can show you that in a minute because I know that Etienne kind of skipped over that a little bit. But you have to make sure that it's in other places. So like on this one, on the first one, she was trying to recreate something, but she didn't put a journal entry in the 1025. And she did it as 1095 on the donations received without consideration. There's a journal entry section that it should have been on the journal, and that would have matched those up. There's also, 70 cents difference there, which you'll notice. The next thing is there's a transcription error. Is it the rule of 9? If you're 9 cents off or a number divisible by 9, chances are pretty good you have a number flipped.
Is the number divisible by 3?
Oh, by 3. Sorry.
You would take the digits in the number 1 plus 0 plus 9 plus 5. Is that divisible by 3? And then you've probably got a transcription.
Yeah. This case, they did 95 instead of 25. And I don't remember on this one which one was the correct one. I mean, that was 5 years ago. I've stopped since then. The other things, are you sure you made the quarter change on the report? I have done this to myself where I sit there for like half an hour going, what is wrong? Why is this not doing it? It's like, oh, because I'm a dumbass and forgot to change the quarter. Are you really, really sure? Double check. If all else fails, take a break, go for a walk. Sometimes when you're staring at them, you will start to miss the things that you're looking at because you've been staring at it for so long and you need to change of pace. Or worst case scenario, if you're still stuck, ask somebody else, another set of eyes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an Exchequer. You can have someone who can see, and they can see, there's an oddity. Exchequers will probably find it a little bit faster, but there are times when someone else who's not an Exchequer will see the error and that you've been staring at for the last 20 minutes or hour, 3 days. So screen sharing has stopped. Any questions?
I really have to second that as a small business owner. The more I look at something, the more normal it is, even though it won't tally. So just stick your face in the cat's belly, go do something, and then have somebody who has no idea what you're doing look at it. Because they're usually the ones who find it for me.
Yeah. Garrett, you said, holy cow, I just realized the titles of each section are below the area of reference. Yes and no. Let me get back to the other form here. It's not necessarily that they're below, it's that that's the line it's going to pull from. So and I need to make it a little bigger so you guys can see it. That's actually a bad way to do it. Don't you hate when you're like, I'm going to show you this one thing, and then you're like, which one thing? Is it that one? No, not that one. No, not that one. Well, okay, and let me share this, and then that will make more sense as I'm prattling on about various things. This one. So this gives you where it is, but you'll notice the total, and this is where the automatic is going to kick in, because you can make the changes here in the blue. The Excel does the math to total it, and it tells you where it's going to put it. But things like the transfer or the income, hey, get back here. You know, it still has that bits there, and then the total, and then the totals. On the balance sheet here, you have liabilities and you have total liabilities. You have assets, you have total assets. So it is doing a little bit of a breakdown there. Is that what you're talking about, Garrett?
Sorry, no. Go back to primary account. Nope, not that one. It's the, yes. So balance, yeah. Bank statement of end of period. It would be really nice if there was a space between that and deposits not clear statement.
Yeah, no, I get what you're talking about there. I think it's a matter of how they had to make it so it printed that, yeah, this is one section. This is the total of this section.
Yeah.
And then they spaced it here to have this being the total of this section. Yeah, no, I would agree. Or box this in differently, like they did down here. But yeah, I would agree with you on that one.
Thanks. Sorry, I've been doing that wrong for now 3 months with some outstanding checks, putting them in the wrong section because I thought that title goes with the thing below it, obviously.
Yeah. No. Like I firmly believe that there are people who can do words and people who can do numbers, and quite often they don't mix. So the people who are making these can do numbers, but not necessarily doing layout and words correctly. So, yeah. All right, Kira, all yours. 12 up, straight o'clock. Boom.
Elowen is actually going to cover in the next part because Aislinn had to step away.
Okay, hello everybody. So I'm going to talk briefly about how to carry over your starting numbers from last year to the new year. And I'll have to apologize up front. I'm not as prepared for this piece as I will be for my book review section that I'll do later on. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, this is an old Kingdom report from 2021, but it'll do for now. I had to actually dig up old reports out of my recycle bin when I realized I was going to actually do this section. So this was the first one I can find. All right, so there's a number of key areas that you need to know about and make sure that you transfer your numbers over correctly, because you could actually balance your books all year long to the wrong starting numbers, and then it doesn't get noticed until the Kingdom Exchequer tries to enter your numbers into her roll-up, and it's not balancing because the roll-up has different starting numbers. So first of all, let's focus on the balance sheet, right? Because your starting numbers for like, let's just talk about this year. For your starting numbers for 2023 should mirror your ending numbers for 2022. And you can see here, here's your ending numbers all along here. So those need to be shown in your starting column. But you can see here by looking at your starting column, there's only 2 areas where you can actually enter data, which you should do, enter it in correctly. But all of these other ones, the regalia, the depreciation, all of that gets imported from other supplemental schedules within this report. Some people prefer to just get a fresh report and just start fresh. What I used to do was I would take last year's report and clear all the numbers out. That way, some of the stuff that needs to be imported from supplemental schedules is still in the report. I don't have to retype in my regalia and depreciation. I just found that was easier for me. You're going to do whatever works for you. But one of the things people need to understand, and I see this often, is on your ending numbers, perhaps maybe it was done by a prior exchequer or maybe 3 or 4 prior exchequers, there's a payable listed and you don't know what that payable is. So you just skip it. You don't include it on your starting numbers. And actually that was a big problem that I saw a lot. So now when the Kingdom Exchequer gets your report at year end, she's not going to be able to balance because it will be off the amount of that payable. So you need to either transfer that payable over, and if it's super old and stale, you would still need to transfer it over and maybe in the first quarter clear it off to make it go away. Let's see. If you're using one of the reports that has the journal that integrates with the entire report format, those reports often come with a trial balance. I don't believe there's a trial balance in the version 6 that Kingdom wants you to use. At least I think it's version 6. So if you look here at this trial balance, it actually completely mirrors the ending balance of the prior year. This you can key in. But you'll really, again, I don't think you have trial balances on the Kingdom report that we're required to use now. Another thing is, let's say you're using the integrated journals, is you really need to make sure that this number here for the balance in your checking account is true and accurate. And budgets, that's always, I love this tool. Not all the integrated journals have it, by the way. All right, so here we go. Your primary account too is, you need to understand that when you're looking at what your ending bank balance was for the year, it's your reconciled bank balance. You have already reported on all these checks here. They were already reported and expensed in the prior year. So that's the beginning balance that you're working with. Can you guys, anybody think of anything I've left out here? All right, so let's go. Payables, right? So that's where if you have a payable from the prior year and you want to make sure it imports correctly into the starting balance, you need to go to this sheet here and move it from current amount to prior amount, or maybe both if it's still on your books. So that's how you get your balance sheet to populate correctly. And there may be occasions where you receive a direction from the Kingdom Exchequer to change a starting number. Usually that happens because she had to make an adjustment to get the roll up to balance. Maybe she noticed that you'd left that payable off, so she put it back in, but she needs to tell you it's been put back in. Make sure you carry it over to the next year. And sometimes society will actually make an adjustment and require changes too. There was one year where society expensed a lot of regalia items that were below $2,500. So that changed your regalia and your depreciation, all of that changed. And that had to be communicated back to the branch exchequers so that they know to change their reports. Because if you don't, Again, you're gonna be balancing to the wrong numbers. Things aren't gonna jive. Aislenn's gonna cry. It makes things really, really difficult to balance.
You don't want to make your Kingdom Exchequer cry.
No, you don't. You don't. I gotta tell you guys, my experience with that roll up is it is quite the monster of a spreadsheet. And there's so many minor errors that you guys can make on your end that really affect the Kingdom Exchequer and can cause hours of work trying to figure out where things went wrong. Most importantly would be your transfers in and out. That's probably the hardest part of the roll up to balance.
Ella, in the form that we're looking at now, this is the large version, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
because this was done for Kingdom.
Yeah, so the majority of the people here should not be seeing as detailed or as complicated a report form.
Probably not. I mean, the only difference between the large and the medium versions and all of that is the amount of extra tables you've got. So here below comments, you've got another page for secondary accounts, another page for comparative balance detail, in case you've got more items to enter than the first page will allow you. Same thing, you've got extra pages for regalia, depreciation, transfers in and out. The medium report only has like one extra page of some of these, and the small report has no extra pages. So in my experience, that is really the only difference between the reports, because we all have to report on the same stuff regardless of the size of our branch.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that, like, I know that at one point one of the inland guys had downloaded the large one and put something on like one of the D's or C's way back out because he thought it was right there, and then also put it on the actual A, and he couldn't figure out why he was wrong.
Yeah,
and I had to go search for it and find it and realize he put it in twice.
I think I remember that situation because I couldn't find it and you did. But yeah, that is a pitfall, is make sure you're working in the correct pages and that you haven't accidentally doubled something up on a supplemental page. Yes, thanks. All right, any questions? Anything that I left out? All right. Well, that's kind of all I had for transferring your balances over. I think I covered everything. When in doubt, contact your Kingdom Exchequer. One of the things to remember also is her deadline to submit the roll-up is the end of March. And it can be as late as September before she gets feedback from Kingdom and says, okay, here's your roll-up for the next year. And that's where she has the opportunity to see the final numbers for the prior year and the numbers that your report's supposed to balance to. So sometimes, we try to make it so that you don't go all year balancing the wrong numbers. Every now and then there could be a situation where we do in the third quarter have to go back and make adjustments because we're just finding out.
Which isn't fun. I've had to do that like once or twice.
Yeah.
For the record, as the Laurel Exchequer, I received my notification in January of this year that my 21 was correct.
Wow.
Yeah. After I turned in my 22 report, but that's something else entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things to remember is we are all volunteers. You're volunteers, the Kingdom Exchequer team are volunteers, and so are a large portion of the people in corporate, or the amount of paid employees in corporate. It's like one person to wrangle all of these branches, and there might be two. But anyways, there's not a lot of staffing, and sometimes things kind of go slowly. All right, that was all I had, Kira.
Is there any questions about the first half of the training? Because we have about 20 minutes before we expect to take a break for about a half hour. Let you guys get something to eat, and then jump back into it for the rest.
I would say, if not, we probably can shift the schedule forward a little bit and give people some of their Sunday back.
Malik, do you have something?
Hello? Yes,
y-
do you have to have Excel to use any of these sheets?
You can use, if you're using your on-tier account, you can open it up in Microsoft. But it is helpful to have Excel, yes.
You know, my experience is I did have a couple of branches that were not Microsoft people and wanted to use Mac versions or things like that. And they had problems balancing often. My recommendation is to use Excel and, like Kira said, go through your 365 account for your Exchequer, and it should have an Excel program in there that you can use.
Okay.
I used to
We're
use Open Office and it worked, but it was problematic and clunky as everything.
I know before we got to
it's very helpful.
Before we got onto 365, we had a branch in the inlands who he used Open Office for it, and quite often I would be taking what he sent me as the Open Office, export to Excel, and opening it up and having to re-enter it because the macros don't work, whatever doesn't work. Just don't ask Arantius about that. He's got horror stories. But yeah, the online version does work for it. Where we haven't run into an issue where it does work for it or doesn't work for it. And honestly, at this point, I would think probably you could actually buy an Office 365 license and expense it, because you need to do it for your thing. If for whatever reason you can't get the online to work, the personal version, we used to buy Excel for people back in the day, so.
Duncan, are you asking like for the training for pre-reg PayPal? Or are you talking about for what I have listed on the schedule for what are the new changes to PayPal? I'm gonna do a PayPal training actually coming up here. I just had the July coronation ask me about it. So I do know we're gonna have a PayPal training, but not today. We are gonna talk about the upcoming changes, but the ePay deputy is not on yet. So why don't we go ahead and shift and go ahead and take about a half-hour break, and then come back at it, and we'll wrap things up with the last little things that we have, and hopefully everybody will be back.
I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and I will start it up again. Let's say we meet back at 12:45.
Yep.
But then the Zoom will stay open. I'm just going to stop recording.